Wenatchee, Washington, a town known for its apple orchards and the tranquil flow of the Columbia River, harbored a sinister secret. Between 1997 and 2001, a series of gruesome murders cast a dark shadow over this peaceful valley. The unknown assailant, later dubbed the Garrote Phantom, preyed upon unsuspecting residents, leaving a trail of fear and unanswered questions. It began one foggy evening in October 1997. Jenny Thompson, a college student at Wenatchee Valley College, was found dead in a secluded alley behind a popular cafe. Her body bore the hallmark of the Garrote Phantom, a deep, merciless ligature mark around her neck, indicating she had been strangled with a garrote. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence left behind, only the lifeless form of a promising young woman. The initial investigation led nowhere. Detective Mark Harrington, a seasoned officer with the Wenatchee Police Department, headed the case. He was baffled by the lack of evidence. "It's like he's a ghost," Harrington muttered to himself as he examined the crime scene for the umpteenth time. The town was shaken, but no one anticipated the horror that would follow. Over the next 4 years, the Garrote Phantom struck again and again. Each victim was discovered in various locations around the Wenatchee Valley, by the river, near the orchards, and quiet residential areas. All bore the same telltale signs: strangled with a garrote, no signs of struggle, and no forensic evidence to point to the killer. The victims were random: men, women, young, old. There was no pattern to the Phantom's choice of prey, which made the killer all the more terrifying. In March 1999, Sarah Mitchell, a well-known local artist, became the Phantom's latest victim. Her body was found in her studio, slumped over her easel, her lifeless eyes staring blankly at an unfinished painting. Harrington, now leading a dedicated task force, felt the weight of each unsolved case pressing down on him. He pored over every detail, every report, every piece of evidence, but the Garrote Phantom remained elusive. The case took a toll on Harrington. His once neat office became cluttered with files and photos, the faces of the victims staring back at him accusingly. He spent sleepless nights combing through records, interviewing potential witnesses, and chasing down leads that inevitably went cold. The town grew wary, residents locking their doors and looking over their shoulders, but the Phantom always found a way. In 2001, the Garrote Phantom's reign of terror abruptly ceased. The murder stopped, and for a brief moment, Wenatchee breathed a sigh of relief. The task force was disbanded, the case files archived, but Harrington could not let it go. He knew the Phantom was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike again. Years passed, and the memory of the Garrote Phantom began to fade from the public consciousness. The orchards continued to bloom, the river flowed serenely, and life in Wenatchee slowly returned to normal. But in the back of Harrington's mind, the unsolved cases lingered, a constant reminder of his failure to catch the killer. In 2008, 7 years after the last known murder, a jogger discovered a body near the Apple Capitol Recreation Loop Trail. The victim, a middle-aged man, had been strangled with a garrote. The Phantom had returned. Harrington, now retired, was called back to consult on the case. He examined the new evidence, but it was as if time had stood still, the same meticulous method, the same lack of clues. The return of the Phantom reignited fear in Wenatchee. Harrington, working with a new team of detectives, retraced the steps of the original investigation. They re-interviewed witnesses, re-examined the old crime scenes, and pored over cold case files. Despite their efforts, the killer remained a step ahead. Then, in 2010, another body was found, this time near the riverbank. A young woman, barely out of her teens, her life cut short by the same cruel method. The Garrote Phantom was becoming bolder, taunting the police with his ability to evade capture. The town's residents grew restless, their unease palpable. Rumors and theories abounded, but no concrete evidence emerged. Harrington began to suspect that the Phantom was someone intimately familiar with Wenatchee, someone who knew the area's ins and outs, its hidden corners and quiet places. But the suspect list was endless, and the Phantom's ability to blend in was uncanny. One rainy evening in 2011, Harrington received a call from a former colleague. "Mark, you need to see this," the voice on the other end said, urgency in every word. He hurried to the police station, where he was shown a grainy security footage from a gas station near the latest crime scene. In the corner of the frame, a hooded figure could be seen, their face obscured, but the way they moved, calm, deliberate, sent a chill down Harrington's spine. The footage provided a breakthrough of sorts, narrowing down the time frame and location, but it was still not enough to identify the Phantom. Frustration mounted as the killer remained at large, striking sporadically over the next few years, each time leaving behind the same signature, a life snuffed out, a family shattered, and no trail to follow. By 2015, the Garrote Phantom had claimed over 20 victims. Harrington, now in his 70s, felt the weight of each unsolved murder. He had dedicated his life to bringing justice to the victims and their families, but the Phantom remained an enigma. As the years passed, Harrington's health began to decline, and he feared he would never see the killer brought to justice. In a final effort to solve the case, Harrington reached out to a renowned criminal profiler, Dr. Evelyn Roberts. She arrived in Wenatchee, bringing fresh eyes and new techniques to the investigation. Together, they re-examined the evidence, hoping to find something that had been overlooked. Dr. Roberts noticed a pattern in the victims' lives, a small, seemingly insignificant detail that connected them. Each had visited a particular orchard, known for its heirloom apples, shortly before their deaths. The orchard was owned by an elderly man, Henry Clark, who had lived in Wenatchee his entire life. Clark was well liked in the community, known for his generosity and the high quality of his apples. But as Dr. Roberts and Harrington dug deeper, they discovered a darker side. Clark had a history of violence, a fact carefully hidden from public view. In his youth, he had been involved in several altercations, and there were whispers of his volatile temper. Confronting Clark, Harrington and Dr. Roberts found a frail, unassuming man. He denied any involvement in the murders, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something, fear, perhaps, or guilt. Despite their suspicions, there was no concrete evidence linking Clark to the crimes. As the investigation stalled once more, Dr. Roberts proposed a bold plan to set a trap for the Phantom. They would use a decoy, someone who fit the profile of the victims, and monitor the orchard closely. It was a dangerous gamble, but Harrington agreed, knowing it might be their last chance. The plan was set into motion, with an undercover officer posing as a potential victim. For days, nothing happened, and Harrington began to fear they had made a mistake. Then, one night, the Phantom struck. But it wasn't the decoy who was attacked. Instead, a 27-year-old man was strangled and his bound lifeless body was left near a bronze cannon monument in Memorial Park in front of the Chelan County Courthouse with a sloppily hand-written note simply stating, "Nice try. Wrong person. Knock knock, I was at your doorstep. Be back in a couple years when the apples blossom." The Phantom's last known victim was killed in August of 2023.